In the winter of 897, the people of Rome witnessed one of the strangest trials in history. The accused was a former pope named Formosus. There was only one problem. He had already been dead for several months. His corpse was removed from its grave, dressed in papal robes, placed on a throne, and put on trial inside a church. This event became known as the Cadaver Synod. Formosus had lived during a violent period in medieval Rome. Noble families, kings, and church leaders fought constantly for power. Becoming pope did not guarantee safety. It often made a man the most visible target in Europe. Formosus became pope in 891. Long before that, he had made powerful enemies. He had been accused of breaking church rules and supporting the wrong political factions. At one point, he was excommunicated. Later, he was forgiven and allowed to return, but the hatred against him never disappeared. As pope, Formosus became involved in a struggle over who should control Italy. He changed political alliances, which his enemies described as betrayal. Then, in 896, Formosus died. Normally, death would have ended the conflict, but his enemies wanted more than his death. They wanted to erase his reputation. A new pope named Stephen VI came to power. Stephen supported the faction Formosus had opposed. Soon afterward, he ordered Formosus's body to be taken from its tomb. The corpse had already begun to decay. Servants dressed it in white papal clothing and carried it into the Basilica of St. John Lateran. There, the dead pope was placed upright on a throne. A church official stood beside the body and answered questions for it. Then Pope Stephen began the trial. He shouted accusations at the corpse. He claimed Formosus had illegally become pope and had violated sacred church rules. The body could not defend itself. The result had already been decided. Formosus was declared guilty. His election as pope was canceled, and many of his decisions were declared invalid. Then the court ordered a final punishment. The 3 fingers Formosus had used to give blessings were cut from his right hand. His papal robes were torn away. The corpse was dragged through the streets of Rome and thrown into the Tiber River. But the story did not end there. According to later accounts, a monk or fisherman recovered the body and secretly buried it again. Rumors spread that miracles were happening near the remains. At the same time, the people of Rome became furious with Pope Stephen. The trial had been meant to humiliate Formosus, but many saw it as an act of madness. Only months later, Stephen was removed from power. He was imprisoned and eventually strangled inside his cell. The dead pope had been condemned. Now the judge was dead too. Later popes reversed the verdict against Formosus. His body was returned to St. Peter's Basilica and buried with honor. But the real purpose of the trial was never simply to punish a dead man. By declaring Formosus an illegitimate pope, Stephen could challenge every priest and bishop Formosus had appointed, and his enemies could erase his influence and replace his supporters. The trial looked insane, but it had a cold political purpose. That may be the darkest part of the story. The men inside the church knew that a corpse could not argue. It could not reveal secrets. It could not defend its allies. It could only sit silently while the living rewrote its history. More than 1,000 years later, the image remains unforgettable. A decomposing body dressed in white robes, a throne inside a sacred church, a furious pope screaming questions at a corpse, and a room filled with powerful men pretending that justice was being done. The Cadaver Synod reminds us that history is not always shaped by truth. Sometimes it is shaped by whoever controls the courtroom. And sometimes, even death is not enough to escape your enemies.